After our break, Star Trek Discovery is finally back from its mid-season hiatus. But how is the second half of Season 4 progressing, and where will it take us following Ruon and Tarka and Mr. Book stealing the prototype Spore-drive? Welcome to Trek Central, I'm your host Captain Jack, and let's get right into it. All In is the name of the episode and is written by recurring Discovery writer Sean Cochran, who has previously written the great episodes Despite Yourself, New Eden, and Die Trying. The episode is also directed by Christopher J. Byrne and Jen McGowan. Interesting, we have two directors for this episode. The description for episode 8 goes, following a hunch, Captain Burnham tracks Book to an old haunt from her courier days, and gets drawn into a high-stakes competition from a powerful weapon. So let's go all in this episode and see what we thought. If you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can of course follow us on social media for daily updates on the Star Trek universe. As always, please let us know what you thought in the comment section below, because if you are talking about Star Trek, then we want to hear about it. Okay? Hit it. One episode to return to Star Trek Discovery with. Not a particularly action-packed episode, but definitely an episode with a lot of stakes nonetheless. Captain Burnham and Lieutenant Owo go on a mission to not only gain more clues on species 10C, but also to track Book and Tarka down too. I will say, it's interesting this episode points there's all still a lot going on in the galaxy, which hasn't been explored by the Federation, which is actually pretty wild to think about. The mission's about getting star charts from a civilization known as the Stilth, who just haven't been encountered by the Federation. I guess to be fair, at the height of the Federation, only 350 or so member worlds were actually, explored and contacted as such, which isn't much of a galaxy, but it's still pretty interesting to think about. Porfira, the planet where the away team go to find these star charts, is a very cool place, even though we only see its ocean, but having a barge for your black market location is really cool, especially hiding it behind a holographic disguise of a sea monster, which makes sense because obviously people wouldn't actually get that close to a massive sea creature, let alone fly into the mouth of it, unless you're Captain Burnham. I also find that in Season 4, a lot of the issues may come up in the script from a story perspective are weirdly addressed by the writers in interesting ways. For this episode, it's the fact that the away team didn't just detain Book and Tarka straight away, which was addressed later when even the Federation president asked why they didn't do this, with Vance saying the reason they didn't have weapons and were outside Federation territory and have no jurisdiction. Though, talking with Federation president and Admiral Vance, it's interesting that Burnham is allowed to go rogue in solving the issue, but is given permission to do so. And it's more working with the confines of the orders than you're given, I think. To be fair, I think the concept of not breaking rules but not constraining yourself with them is a lesson Burnham needs to learn as captain, so I do appreciate this. Most of the episode was a character heavy, not in terms of quantity, but in terms of quality time we spend with them. Some really needing this episode to shine, and I'm very glad they got it. So let's actually talk about some of the characters and what we loved about them in this episode. I think my favourite character in this episode might be Haz, who I believe is played by Daniel Cash. I adore the prosthetics used for him, being very much like the alien scene in Star Trek Beyond, which would make sense considering the reoccurrence of the Beyond-style aliens in Season 4 of Discovery, such as the Slurm? Such as a Slurm. Haz is the broker we get in the underworld, but we get to see a very personal side of him, perhaps because he's dealing with Book and Burnham who he knows personally. We can see he wants money and profit and whatnot, but he has the charisma to make them not matter, which is great. The actor does an excellent job performing underneath the prosthetic, and the emotion really comes through on the character, such as when he says that he hopes whatever happens doesn't damage Book and Burnham's relationship. Sort of reminds me of Quark in a way. Either Haz himself or his species really love metaphors, since he has one in basically every sentence. A lot which are your generic sci-fi alien metaphors, but some are pretty cool and reference prior episodes of Trek. This did get a little annoying at parts, but was definitely made up for just how it was delivered by the actor. Another great character I have to mention was the absolute deadpan cashier in this episode, played by Oscar Siu, who you can just tell hates working there, but it gets her money, so she just lives with it. She definitely plays a different role compared to the other characters like Quarks, who would be very bubbling with excitement when you won Dabo, but here she just wants it if you want your bag winnings, just like she doesn't care. Do you want a bag of that? Just leave, please. Now obviously in regards to characters, we have to mention the changeling. Yes, we got a changeling, who seems to be separate from the Great Link, so at least it tells us that the changeling are still around in the Star Trek galaxy, which was a big question a lot of people were having throughout its Season 4 and this new future. Though we don't have a lot of reference to where Porfira is, since it's the place Book and Burnham used to visit in their year alone together, it's probably in the Beta Quadrant, so far away from the Dominion's Gamma Quadrant. Therefore, this changeling could have been the one from the 100 changelings sent out into the galaxy, just like Odo from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I will say that the changing effect feels less liquidy and more transformational than we've previously seen, which at first made me think it'd just be a different type of changeling, like Alien, but their appearance at the end made it well known this is another founder changeling, so it's just updated visual effects and prosthetics at the end of the day. Joan Owosikan got a great deal of screen time in this episode of Discovery, which is great to see. Burnham brings her along on a mission because she knows Joan wants to do more to help, and she actually becomes extremely useful, getting 45 times her bet by fighting in the ring. Though it did seem kind of rigged by the two, but oh well, we're not going to say anything. She actually gets a really nice scene of Tarka, talking about whether she agrees with his plan on using the isolytic weapon on the DMA or not, and also ties it back into what we learned recently about watching friends of hers die when she was young, and feeling hopeless about it. Admiral Vance, or the Admiral, gets a nice scene in this episode of worrying about his family, especially now that he has them close to him, and he saw at the beginning of the season how happy he was with them around. Now having someone he brought into the fold betray him, he feels responsible, and worried about having to possibly send his family away again. Now this feeling of responsibility isn't just being felt by Admiral Vance, being let down by Tarka of course, but also Dr. Hugh Culber feeling that he let down Book in the counselling with him. I will say that Paul does really hit the right on the nose with a hammer, saying that this is about the feeling of uncertainty, which we've been told this season was about before it came out. It is addressing one of the current times. It just felt a little heavy-handed for Paul to outright say it, but it does make sense in the context. Of course, like any Star Trek video, we have to talk about fantastic references. This episode was filled with references, not least because of the metaphor spewing has. We get a mention of the Horta, the silicone-based life forms from the original series, apparently inspiring a certain dance known as the Horton Hustle, which I can definitely see being a thing considering that the Horta moved into the Devil in the Dark. The Devore was mentioned alongside their scanners which would detect telepaths from Star Trek Voyager, and another TOS mention with the Elysians from the Elysian of Toyus. You know, with the Horta dance, I just can't help but think of Fortnite dances now. Can we get a Star Trek Horta dance? Somebody out there, you can put it on Twitter and tweet it to us. I dare you, go on. And something which I hope is a preference, the cards for the Lilonian poker looked very familiar, and maybe the Lilonians are the species Natalia is a member of from Star Trek Beyond. Natalia was the alien who spoke to Chekhov in the final group scene of that movie. What looks like to be the Queen card for the Lilonian poker looks to be Natalia's species, which may mean that Natalia's species are the Lilonians. Let's talk about the future of the story. We had the theory that the DMA was a probe, looking into the galaxy from the outside, but seems not to be the case, and instead the DMA is actually a mining tool, to mine for boronite, a rare but very useful mineral in order to power species 10C's technology, with one of them being something called a hyperfield, which seems to work like a Faraday cage, but to me looks to be something akin to a Dyson sphere, but comprised of energy, since it encapsulates an entire star system outside of our galaxy. Though, what is interesting to say is that boronite is used in synthesis of megamolecules, the most powerful substance known to exist, so perhaps it is a megamolecules which are powering with DMA, and this is species 10C technology. If we are dealing with the megamolecules which can wipe out subspace, there may be even more cause for concern for Book and Tarka's plan. How this will proceed is very interesting, considering Book and Tarka now have the isolinium, and the Federation only has the chance to surprise the two and stop them from destroying the DMA, and angling those technological giants. I presume we will get Discovery going against Book and Tarka next episode, since Tarka can get the weapon made in 24 hours. So we have very little time. But when and how will the rest of the season actually play out? I guess we'll have to wait and find out, because you know, it's Star Trek Discovery. Okay, some notes on the final thoughts of this episode. Of course, this episode was a great refreshing start to get back into the world of Star Trek Discovery. It wasn't too action-packed as we said earlier, but was a very small contained episode with big ramifications at hand. Even though it was a fairly small episode, it tied the season together extremely well. Not just with the DMA plot and the advancing, but with Book and Tarka now having the material necessary to build their weapon, but also with the small connections to other episodes. The tracker which Burnham put on the material is the same tracker mentioned in the Quark Malat episode. Joan, wanting to do some help, gets paid off, with being able to go on a mission and help in this episode in a very unique way. The set of this episode was really cool, with the geography of it being established really quickly, which was pretty easy considering it was only 2 rooms, but it's made out to be very easy to follow. I really hope we get a closer look at Haz's room, especially his display on the back wall, because there look to be some interesting weapons and technology there, which I would love to see more of. Visual guides for the win. I will say that the camera work in this episode was superb, especially during the fight scenes and the poker scene, which were both very intimate scenes with very close camera shots. And as I said in this episode, the character work was really where this episode shined the most, which is not always the strength of Discovery, especially with its secondary cast, so getting more focus on these characters like Tarka and Ozekuran was really needed and very much appreciated from a storytelling point of view. Now overall, I really enjoyed this episode, from the character moments to where the story is currently going. I am very much glad Discovery is back on our screens, and I cannot wait to see where the story goes. So, what do you think of this episode of Star Trek Discovery? The return of Season 4 is certainly an interesting one, but did it hold up to your expectations? Like always, if you want to keep up to date on all the latest Star Trek news, lore and more, then make sure to hit that subscribe button to never miss a video from the team here at Trek Central. You can of course follow us on social media, or join our community Discord server. For now, like always, I've been Captain Jack, thanks for watching, and we'll see you very soon in the next video. Live long and prosper, my friends. Goodbye.